January 2026 has changed everything. Just 15 days ago, the world watched in shock as U.S. Special Forces extracted Nicolás Maduro from Caracas in a midnight raid. Now, with Maduro awaiting trial in New York and the U.S. military effectively overseeing Venezuela, President Trump has just dropped a second bombshell, a $1.5 trillion defense request, the largest in human history. But as the Golden Dome begins its trillion-dollar rollout and trade wars with Canada, Mexico, and China send grocery prices to record highs, a terrifying question is emerging. Is America building a dream military or a financial house of cards? With the national debt hitting a breaking point and the public divided over Operation Absolute Resolve, can the U.S. actually afford the new era of global intervention? Today, we're looking at the raw data, the secret plans, and the economic reality of 2026. Let's get into it.
On January 8th, President Trump took to Truth Social to announce a 66% increase in the defense budget, calling for $1.5 trillion to build what he calls the dream military. To give you an idea of the scale, that is more than the entire GDP of most developed nations. So where is the money going? It's going into two massive futuristic pillars, the Golden Dome, a space-based kinetic missile shield designed to make the U.S. invulnerable to ICBMs, and the Golden Fleet, a naval expansion specifically designed to challenge China in the Pacific. But here's the catch. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, recently cut 8% of the Pentagon's baseline fat, but those savings are being swallowed whole by these new projects. While Senate hawks like Roger Wicker say this is necessary to reach 5% of GDP spending, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget warns this could add $6 trillion to our debt. Trump claims tariff revenue will pay the bill, but as of mid-January, tariff collections are still hundreds of billions short of that $500 billion gap. The math isn't just messy, it's high stakes.
The affordability question isn't theoretical anymore, it's operational. Operation Absolute Resolve, the capture of Maduro on January 3rd, was a tactical masterstroke with 0 U.S. casualties, but the day after is proving expensive. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has outlined a 3-phase plan: stabilization, recovery, and transition. But stabilization requires a persistent military presence to secure oil fields and prevent a power vacuum. Experts are calling this the new Monroe Doctrine in action. The administration argues that by controlling Venezuelan oil, the war pays for itself. But the 56% of Americans who say Trump has gone too far with military intervention aren't convinced. If Venezuela becomes a prolonged occupation rather than a quick extraction, the America First promise of staying out of forever wars might be the first casualty. Can we afford to run a country while we're still trying to fix our own economy? While the military is winning in Caracas, the average American is losing at the checkout counter. By January 15, 2026, customs duties have surged by over 300% due to the new global tariff regime. We are seeing a tariff trap. 75% of Americans report that daily goods are significantly more expensive than they were a year ago. The administration's bet is that economic security is national security, that by forcing manufacturing back to the U.S., we become war-proof. But wartime inflation is a real threat. If the U.S. moves from the maximum pressure campaign against Iran to a hot conflict, or if the 2027 Taiwan deadline moves up, global shipping will freeze. We are already seeing front-loading, companies stockpiling goods to avoid tariffs, which is keeping the GDP at 2.8%, but that's a temporary sugar high. If a major war breaks out, the one big beautiful bill, the Reconciliation Act that funded the initial military surge, won't be enough. We'd be looking at a total economic pivot that the 2026 consumer is simply not prepared for. Politically, 2026 is a powder keg.
The midterms are approaching, and the America First coalition is fracturing. On one side, you have the base celebrating the capture of Maduro as a win for law and order. On the other, you have a growing movement of Jeffersonians who fear that a $1.5 trillion military is the hallmark of an empire, not a republic. The January polls are clear. Only 20% of Americans want the U.S. to take a more active role globally. Most want the focus back on the border and the cost of living. If the Trump administration can't translate military victories into lower prices at home, the political affordability of these wars will vanish long before the money runs out.
So, can the U.S. and the Trump administration afford a new war? On paper, the dream military is being built. The technology is there, and the resolve is clear. But with a $1.7 trillion deficit and a public that is already feeling the sting of a trade war, the margin for error is non-existent. A new war in 2026 wouldn't just be a test of our soldiers. It would be a test of whether the American dollar can survive the cost of global dominance. Is the Golden Dome worth the price tag, or are we overextending? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your take on the January 8th budget. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on the 2026 reality. Thanks for watching.